Welcome to Be a Voice on Usula Media. I'm Britt James Carpenter, and I'm excited about today's show. Today, I'm able to sit here and talk with Sober in Central Park, or Rachel. Hey, Rachel.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going really well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
You're good.
Hanging in there.
Good. It wasn't like that much of an exciting intro just because I flubbed it like three times before I did that. But for the listeners out there and the viewers who tune in and watch, I met Rachel a few weeks ago at DopeyCon in New York City. DopeyCon, of course, is a convention. It's a story slam night put on by Dopey Podcast, who was on our show. And I met Rachel at the convention, and she goes by the social media name Sober in Central Park, which I just loved right away. Just had a ring to it. And throughout the night, I kept going back and connecting when I had the opportunity, just because, I always say that in this world, whether it's out there or in our recovery world or whatever world we're talking about, we live off of vibes, and I believe in like experiencing those high vibes of people and connecting. And that's how I'm here with you today, Rachel, because I felt that vibe, and I liked it. So thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. And I felt that vibe too when you walked in and you had your Narcan and you were so excited to be there. And I just thought it was so cool that you came and you were giving out Narcan. And it was such an awesome event. The energy in that room was palpable.
It was amazing, and I was honored that we were allowed to be able to show up and hand out Narcan as people were entering, because you never know how people are going to take that, whether they're in recovery or not, because you have a lot of people in recovery who think sometimes handing out Narcan could be enabling, which is the only thing that's enabling is people to breathe and stay alive. Um, but to be able to connect with everybody as they're walking in, and the energy of the people, and just knowing that you may have never met before, but there was something in common. And that's what I felt. And I really love that from the minute we stepped inside that gate off of Ninth. You know what I mean? Just a great feeling.
It is. And I think that's why I love the sober community and the recovery community, because it doesn't matter how old you are, what gender you are, what anything, like we all have this one big thing in common, and it's a big thing. So it feels
It
like you know the
is.
person.
Absolutely. And, I often say it like my nonprofit, we run recovery homes. And if I'm in a meeting or something like that, I often say that if I look around a room that I'm in at that point in time, there's probably nothing I would have found in common with that person while I was in an active addiction. I probably would have looked at them like, I have nothing in common with you. I don't want to talk to you. Nothing. Now there's no judgment. There's no barriers. There's no walls. In recovery, you're not looking at somebody in that way. You're looking at them as who they are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I think when I was in addiction, active addiction, I just wanted to numb myself and I wanted to just get messed up. And I really didn't care about hobbies or books or things people were doing or career, because that stuff just wasn't important to me.
Who has times for a hobby when you want to get messed up? I'm gonna go get totally fucked up, obliterated. I don't have time for a hobby. That is my hobby. You know, so let me ask you, what was your hobby of choice?
I mean, it changed over the years. Definitely in my 20s, it was, Coke and ecstasy and shrooms and whatever. Oh, alcohol was always there. And then after my 20s, it was really just alcohol and whiskey, Maker's Mark on the rocks. I would just like, I wasn't like a wine drinker. I was like, let me get as fucked up as I can, as quickly as I can, and let me try to go as long as I can. That's why I love. But I think also because I'm close to New York City, and I always was close to New York City growing up. Like cocaine was so easy to get when we were
Mhm.
really young.
Absolutely, and you hit that. Like that's the progression. It's weird. People, the 20s, the Coke era, and then moving on. Are you from New York originally?
No, not originally. I was born in Boston, and that's where my parents grew up. And we moved around from New Jersey and Connecticut. We were in Pittsburgh for a few years. So it was actually really unstable because we were never in a place for too long for me to put down real roots. But by the time I was in eighth grade, we were back in Connecticut and in West Hartford.
Oh.
And yeah, it was easier to get drugs than to get alcohol. In Connecticut, they have the blue laws too. So you couldn't get alcohol after 9 o'clock,
Yeah.
and you couldn't get it on Sundays.
Sundays. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know West Hartford very well. I know West Hartford very well. But and I know the area. So how long have you been in New York?
Well, my dad moved here when I was like 15 or 16 after my parents got divorced. And I went to boarding school because I was a bad kid. And I went and I repeated my
Really?
sophomore year. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I was
Really?
getting into trouble a lot.
Really? At what age did this start?
Um, so I was 15. I was a sophomore in high school, and West Hartford has great public schools.
Mhm.
But I guess I just decided that I didn't want to go to school anymore. So I just stopped going. I would just ditch, and I had older friends. Now looking back, though, I'm ADHD, and I wasn't diagnosed then. So it makes sense why I had lost interest in school. It was becoming harder. My
Mhm.
concentration wasn't there. My parents got divorced. I had found, alcohol and drugs, and I just didn't care.
Mhm.
But my mom cared. So my mom was like, no, you're not going down this road. I'm going to send you away to boarding school, and you're going to repeat your sophomore year, and let's see how that goes. But a few months into boarding school, a teacher one day was like, "You forgot to take your meds this morning." And I was like, "I'm not on meds." And she's like, Oh my gosh, you're not on meds." And I was quickly evaluated for ADHD and got diagnosed and put on medication. And then things changed for the better for a while. And it gave me a lot of answers as to why I was always getting in trouble for talking too much in class, why I was always being so impulsive, or my emotions were all over the place. I was really sensitive. Stuff that I always knew I was different than the collective, but I didn't know what it was. So ADHD kind of gave me some answers, and I was grateful. Um, but yeah,
I
it's not
bet.
a fix.
So when did you start using? If you were a sophomore and your mom was like red flags were being sent up and she was like, I need to get my daughter help and I want to, you know, get it to her now. When did this start?
I was, it was the summer before ninth grade, the summer before I went into high school. Um, and it was horrible because the first time I got drunk was actually the night I lost my virginity. And it wasn't planned. It was very just happened. And the whole school ended up finding out.
Oh,
And that was like one of the, I can pinpoint, I think, that back to really the start of everything being crazy because the whole school found out, all of these rumors were flying around, people were coming up with names, and I think I just decided to lean into it instead of fight it. And so that kind of led me to smoking weed and doing coke and drinking and becoming friends with a way older group of
mhm.
people. And they were like juniors and seniors. So they were like partying and going out. And I was a little freshman. And I would tag along with them. And I guess I just thought, whatever, it doesn't matter. But it did matter. And, I started numbing really young.
Interesting. You know, I think a lot of people don't understand addiction because of the fact that they just don't want to. They make judgments on it to begin with it. But people need to look at the fact that majority of addiction starts with some form of trauma. And that trauma starts at an early age. And that early age really sets the tone for the rest of your life. I mean, they talk about 25 being the developmentally, where your brain becomes more developmentally stable, but it's not to that point. So anything before that is real effective. And especially on an emotional and a social toll for somebody, especially somebody in their preteen to beginning of teen years, that's a vulnerable area. So that night that you got drunk, can I ask, did you intend to lose your virginity, or did you think it was because you got drunk? Was that the way it fell into place?
It was not intentional. It was definitely not intentional, and very random. But I think I just thought it was cool. Like I thought I would, and they were older kids, and I don't know. It's when I think back to that version of myself, though, she was already hurt. That wasn't like the first trauma. I think,
Right.
growing up and moving around as much as we did, was kind of traumatic in itself. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was always the new kid. I always had to be making new friends. I had been a competitive athlete, a swimmer, and that, I it was hard to keep changing teams. And um, it wasn't just that, though. My father and I never had a good relationship, and that was really, really hard on me as well. He is a very much of a disciplinarian, surgeon, and I was very defiant and never liked to follow the rules. I was a rule breaker through and through, and he would tell me to do something and I would be like, no, I'm not doing that.
Spoken like a true addict, rule breaker through and through. Are you an only child?
No. But I'm
Oh,
the oldest.
okay. All right. So how many are in the family?
So there's three of us. It's
Okay.
me, and then my brother, and then my sister. And my brother and I are pretty similar. Yeah, I think he's ADHD too, and we just have a lot of the same traits. My sister's like the perfect angel. Like never got in trouble, never did anything wrong. Like just perfect.
She's the youngest. I think that's the youngest trait, isn't it? They can't do anything wrong. I think because the path was already paved by the oldest. So you did that, you know? How is your relationship with your siblings, may I ask?
um, it's interesting. It's changed a lot over the years, until before I got sober. I was pretty much a chaotic mess all the time. And I think that was my place in the family structure, was the black sheep,
Mm-hmm.
always causing a scene, always something was always going wrong. And then I got sober and it changed, and I changed. And then I started recovering out loud and helping other people. And my relationships with both of them changed a lot. I would say we're probably not as close now as we were before, but we also just are older and we're
Right.
adults and we don't spend as much time together. But it's been a struggle. That's one thing I didn't expect coming into this journey or starting the sober journey is that my relationships with my siblings would change. And even my parents, everything has changed beyond what I would have ever expected, but in good and bad ways.
Absolutely. And I think people realize that too. People always think that like, oh, you're in recovery, life is grand. No, I mean, we're just beginning. We're beginning to like discover these feelings that we have, whether they're really positive or we're harboring some intense negative feelings, and they're coming out. And it's a journey. Like you said, you're beginning a journey. And whether you've been in recovery for 2 years or 20 years, it's a journey every day. And we experience it. And we've got to embrace that. We've got to let people know. And I love the fact that you said you recover out loud, because that was one thing about me. I spent half my life in active addiction, which is a long time. And I was always afraid to tell people that something was wrong. And my first few months in recovery, I never wanted to tell people that I had a problem, that I was a heroin addict who overdosed 5 times. But I realized by not doing that, I was like harboring still negative feelings in myself. And I started to recover out loud and bringing awareness and being a voice and just connecting with people like you. So, how long were you in active addiction?
Wow. From like, I would say the real addiction probably started when I was about 18, and until I was 31 when I got sober.
And you've been
So a long
sober
time,
how long?
almost 3 years.
Almost
It'll be
three
3 years in
years.
January.
January? January what?
Hmm. January 3rd, because
Nice.
my mom asked me to do a dry January with her in 2021. And I said no. And so I drank on the first and I drank on the second. And I had a horrendous hangover on January 3rd. And I woke up and I saw a bunch of social media posts about dry January. And I was a lot heavier then in terms of my weight. And I thought to myself, you know what? Maybe I'll just like lose some weight. Like I'll try it out. I had to like convince myself that this was, not just to get sober forever. And I said, I'm just going to do 30 days. So I started on the 3rd of January, and that was my last drink. So
January
it's
3rd,
been
2021?
mhm.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank
I
you.
every day, one day is amazing. I wanted to bring back to what you just said because I'm glad you said it because once you and I connected and we became friends, and I, of course, stalked your social media page so I could see what you were all about. I came across a picture of you, or yeah, you were there with the sombrero on and drinking some margaritas. And if you're okay with it, I would love to have Danny find that picture or send it to him and post it on this because you talked about you were a lot heavier. And that picture shows you were. And
Yeah.
yeah, the,
But that picture was from, I know what you're talking about. That was actually from my 30th birthday weekend. My mom has a lake house in New Hampshire, and we were all up there for my 30th birthday. And in that night with the sombrero, I ended up falling asleep drunk at the table next to my mom.
whoa, whoa.
Yeah, not good.
Now, was your mother a drinker? Is she?
So interesting question. My mother, I've probably seen my mother drunk like twice in my whole life. She never was a drinker. She's super healthy. She was always going to yoga, working out, but she liked her Cosmos. She liked to have her wine, like
Mm-hmm.
never more than like 2 drinks at a time. But then when I started recovering out loud and sharing everything on social media, um, she about like maybe I guess 13 or 14 months ago, she stopped drinking herself. So now she is sober and on this journey with me, and she's 64 and she's so happy, and it's so cool. I would have never imagined that my mom and I would both be sober together. Like,
That's awesome. That's so well. You got to tell mom then that she needs to come on the show and talk about that because that is so cool. I mean, to be able to share that with your daughter, I mean, she must be so proud to begin with, knowing the route. Sorry, knowing the road that you took, to get to where you're at, but let alone now going down that road with you. That's so cool.
yeah.
I like
Yeah,
that.
she is proud. She's my biggest cheerleader. She's my best friend. She was there for me and believed in me when no one else did. She's the reason I got my education. She sent me to boarding school, which was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. I don't know if I would have been diagnosed with ADHD then. And, I ended up getting into my first choice college, which was Dartmouth College. Because she helped, she was obsessed with the college process. That's actually where she went to college.
Nice.
And college though was not easy for me. My mental health was really bad then, and I left school twice. I took a medical leave and a personal leave from college, and my mom kept making. She made sure I went back and I finished and I got my degree, even when I was not easy to get along with. I was an angry, sad, mad individual for a really long time, and she didn't give up on me. So yeah, I think I owe like my life to my mom for real.
That's awesome. And as you were describing yourself and the way you were in college, I sort of sighed a little bit because like you described me to a T. I was the same way. I was angry. I was sad. I was depressed like you wouldn't believe. And I think a lot of that comes from that imbalance that we experience with this disease. And it's not knowing how to because we're at that vulnerable stage and age where we don't know much about life, let alone what the fuck's going on in our heads and our bodies. So it's been crazy. So, there's a lot of people that enter recovery and they just go by under the radar. And then there's people like, Dave from Dopey, how we met, and myself and you and all the other beautiful network of people that we got to meet that day that recover out loud. So my question to you is why? Why did you decide to do that?
Well, I didn't even know what recovering out loud was when I started my Instagram account. I was about almost 9 months into my journey, and in those first 9 months, I broke up with my long term partner, who we lived together. We were technically married, and made him move out. So that was a big change. And I felt really alone. A lot of my friends that I had before were alcoholics and huge partiers, and I tried to stay friends with them for a while, but it got to a point where I realized we actually had nothing in common anymore. And I didn't want to sit around and watch them drink in a dive bar on a beautiful day. Like
Mm-hmm.
and I felt lost.
Mm-hmm.
When I started like my journey there, it was COVID. So there weren't in-person meetings anywhere. So I didn't do the AA route. And I found myself just really searching for people who understood what I was going through and got me. And so I turned to Instagram. I didn't feel comfortable posting about sober content on my old Instagram account, which was where I glamorized drinking and, partying. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to start a new one. I'm going to start a new account, mainly to hold myself accountable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I was scared that I was going to drink again. So I was always in Central Park because before I got sober, I didn't know my way around Central Park at all. Like it's a huge park, and I would
Yeah.
just drink there and leave. Like I didn't know where anything was. But my dog George, he's an explorer. He loves to push me out of my comfort zone, and he would just pull me to Central Park. And so we started like going in the park a little bit, and then going in a little bit more and exploring more. And it became this 6 mile walk that we did every morning. So I'm making this Instagram account and I'm like, what do I call it? I was like, well, I'm literally sober in Central Park all the time. So that's where the name came from. It was very literal. And the first two posts, I didn't even know if I was going to show my face. I was like, I can post pictures of Central Park. I can post pictures of my dog and just, talk about recovery. And then the third post, I put up a transformation picture myself. I'm so all or nothing. It's the ADHD. There's no
Yeah.
middle. I was like, let's not only show myself, let me show
All in.
myself in comparison to a horrible picture from a few years ago.
Yep.
And then I just started meeting people who got it in the DMs and making new friends on Instagram. And it felt healing, and it helped me process my emotions. It also helped me meet people. And I created this amazing community on Instagram. And now most of my friends, even in real life, are people I've met either through Instagram, because of Instagram, or at events now like Dopey or
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. So
And I wonder why we
yeah.
vibe so high together because when I went into recovery, I said to myself, if I do 30 days for the first time my entire life, I'm going to start a social media page where people who are underdogs could come, be a member of, can be joining a community, have the support. So I started a page called Philly Unknown on Instagram. We went up to 43,000 followers, but in 2021 it was hacked and taken away from me. But it was funny because I never showed my face. I never talked about much of anything. And then one day I did exactly what you did. I talked about my overdose. Well, one of the five. And it was amazing the people that embraced it and that reached out about it. And like you, a majority of my friends in today's life came from Instagram. They came from my social media journey in recovery. So that's why we vibe so high, because look at that. That's sick. It's a good feeling too, because I know what it's like to be alone, and to be alone, especially in alone when you're recovering, sucks. Because you're already alone when you're using, because you're isolating, whether you're with people or not. But now to do that, so and now your life is sober in Central Park. That's who you became.
It is
And
wild. It's crazy. I still to this like I wake up sometimes and I'm like, is this real life? Is this my reality? Like old me, I always think back to what she would think. And she would never ever have believed this in a million years. Like I never thought I would could get sober. I loved drinking like more than anybody. Um I really didn't think I could go more than 30 days. I was so surprised when I made it 30 days. And I think that though, telling myself, I'm just going to see how long I can go. I never said, like, this is forever. I never said, I can never drink again. I just said, I want to see what I can do. And I'm very competitive. I love a competition, especially with myself. So I would watch that day count. And I think the first few months, I would stare at that day count sometimes for a while. Like it'd be like, can the number just move up more? Like I'm over
mhm.
this. I'm over day 112 or whatever. Um, and now I never look at it unless I'm posting something on Instagram that has to do with it. And it's crazy how it becomes your new normal eventually, and you don't want it anymore, and you don't crave it, and you don't think about it. um, and sobriety just becomes beautiful and magical and fun and amazing.
It's because you discover a world that's out there more than that little shithole incubus that you were stuck in. And that's what I call it. There's people out there that could go out there and they're going to have, 3 or 4 drinks, go home, wake up the next morning and not drink for another week. And that's great. I'm not one of those persons. There's people that go out there and they can blow a line at a party or at a bar on a Friday night to keep going and not want it again for months. I'm not one of those persons. So I got to work at it every day. However, as the days go by, it becomes easier because you find your niche. You find a way to surround yourself by people who are supportive, by becoming that voice, and you've done that. What so far has been your favorite part of this sobriety journey?
um oof. I think discovering New York City in a whole new way and loving this city in a way that I never thought I could love it. I've lived in New York on and off since like 2009. And I used to feel like the city would beat me up all the time. Like it was always something was always going wrong, or I was late, the subway was late, and then that made me, have a panic attack. And someone was rude and pushed me. Like I don't know, like the city can seriously beat you up,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're not strong enough, like a lot of people move out for that reason. It's not an easy place necessarily to live, especially when you're spending your money always on drugs and alcohol, and then you're broke, and that's not fun either. So I think, people always say to me, it must be so hard to be sober in New York. And actually, I don't know how I could be sober in the suburbs, to be honest. Like, I love this city so much, and there's so much to do that has nothing to do with drinking. Like Central Park, the museums, the culture, the different neighborhoods. When I was using, I was so anxious all the time, like to the point of paranoia.
Talk about panic
If I was
attacks,
on
right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I had such bad anxiety that I would go on the subway and I was assuming that everyone was looking at me, everyone was talking about me. Like I would walk down the street and I just thought that like I had like something on my face or something. Like why are all these people out to get me? I mean, it's so irrational when I think back to it now. But my anxiety was just so bad that I didn't do things by myself. So like if I didn't have a friend to go with me somewhere, or my ex couldn't come with me, like I just wouldn't go. And I think that held me back from so many experiences and from really taking advantage of this amazing city that I call home. And so I think I didn't expect this in sobriety, but having the confidence and feeling like not having that anxiety, it's where I can go and explore random things in this city by myself was one of the most liberating things I think that came out of everything.
I love it because I have learned to be able to go and sit down and eat by myself, which I never would do before, you know. And if I did, it was at a bar where I was eating and drinking, you know. And I discovered to do a lot of things. And I actually enjoy being with myself. It's a lot of fun sometimes. Sometimes it's a lot of hell, but it's a lot of fun. You know, sometimes I get stuck in my own head. And then I go back to something, you know, 15 years ago, and I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? But knowing that I'm out of it is a great place to be. And like I said, I love watching you on social media because you just speak about it. You just talk about it. You're free about, you know, it's awesome.
Yeah, I think I realized too. I always shared a lot. I was always an oversharer. I think that's part of ADHD. And I think for a while I was embarrassed or ashamed about it, and because that's what society tells us. Society tells us don't overshare, don't talk about mental health. Just kind of keep it PC. But that's not me. And when I started this Instagram account, my goal was just to be as authentic and real as possible, because why fake it? Why pretend? Like, I just don't have time for that, honestly. I just this is me, take it or leave it. If you like it, great. If you don't, cool. um that was really liberating too, just being able to be my authentic self and say what I really think about stuff.
So you mentioned this basically common law husband that you were with, you know, in a relationship throughout your active addiction and even 9 months into your sobriety. And then you said you just said goodbye.
Well, we were together, not, I mean, I was already an addict before we got together. We got
During it.
together during it,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And he was from Italy. So, and I was very codependent. And we met at a really weird time where I was between jobs and just in a bender, honestly. And I went back to Italy with him after his visa was up, and we got into a horrific accident in Ibiza where my leg was like, yeah, my leg almost got completely so we got into this scooter accident. His parents had to take care of me for like a month, and I was like, let's just get married. Like, I don't want to go back without you. And we barely knew each other, but I came back to the US. I got a K1 visa, like the 90-day fiance
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he came over, and we had 90 days to get married, and we went to the courthouse downtown on the 87th day, got married. And I didn't tell my family till afterwards. And yeah, that's just the kind of stuff I would do. I was like, whatever, it's fine. And we were
Funny
together for
that you were at
5 years.
the 87th day, not like the first week. You really held out to see if, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was my anxiety. I think deep down in me, something told me this was wrong.
of
And
course.
I knew, like, that voice in me was like, don't do it. This is not your person. But the larger anxiety was like, what? Of course, do it. This person is here. Like, just marry them. Like, so you can be together. So you don't have to be alone. Like, I don't know. But yeah, we did that, and my addiction and everything got way worse from the day we got married through for the next 5 years. I started drinking way more. I was using food to numb after that. Like, when we got together, my weight wasn't a problem for me. Like, it was always kind of fluctuating throughout my 20s based on my depression or whatever. But then after we got into this relationship, I was just using anything I could to numb. And I can see when I look in pictures that I just get sadder and sadder, and I get bigger and bigger. And yeah, I wanted to break up with him before COVID happened. But at that point in my life, I was working at a job that made me so miserable. Things were so expensive in life. Like, we were in this apartment that we shared. My sister was going to get married in a few months, and he was in the wedding party, and I was the maid of honor. I mean, there was just so much happening, and I didn't know how. It was like life was just barreling ahead, and I didn't know how to stop it. And as crazy as this sounds, I would pray. I was praying for life to pause and just give me a second to figure stuff out. And because my eye was twitching for like 9 months, it wouldn't stop. I didn't know what to do about our apartment because our lease was coming to an end in April 2020. And I didn't want to be with him anymore, but I didn't want to live with a roommate. And it was just like everything was bad. And then COVID happened. And everything paused. And I thought to myself, like, oh my God, did I cause COVID? um, and, I ended up losing my job and we left the city and got rid of the apartment, put all of our stuff in storage. But I didn't want to break up with him then because then it was like COVID and the world was ending and I was
Hmm.
scared and I needed him to lug all my stuff around for me. So yeah, so then we get back to New York at the end of 2020 and get a new apartment, and I stopped drinking January 2021, and it wasn't 9 months, it was only like 100 days in where I felt the confidence. I felt like, okay, I need to go on this journey by myself. I've been
Hmm.
wanting to break up with this person for a while. We're just not right for each other. He's never going to break up with me. I have to do it. And so I did. I was like, you gotta move on. And it was hard. And he stayed for a few more months. And then at like 6 months, he moved out and I was alone, like really alone. Like I had never lived by myself my
Hmm.
entire life, even through boarding school, through college. Like I never lived alone. And I was alone, well, with my dog. And,
Not a
but
bad
I
place to
think
be
that was
though,
necessary.
with a dog.
No, no. George is my
Yeah.
best friend.
Let's talk about George. George is there with you. So he's been there with you some bad times and now through the good. Do you think that affects your pet at all? You think that affected George at all?
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, I've made content before of showing George's glow up too. So, because George was a rescue.
Mhm.
And I got George in 2018 when I was so depressed that I could barely get off the couch ever, like only to get to work. And it was a struggle. That was a really dark period of life for me when I cried every day. I just never thought things would get better.
Mm.
And I was scared for myself. Like I was scared I wouldn't make it if I didn't have something else to take care of. So I got George, and my ex had forbid me from getting a dog. I don't know why. And I went to this rescue event that I saw on Instagram, and it was in the basement of a pet store in Greenpoint. And George was in a cage, and I was like, that's my dog. Like that is I just saw him and I just knew he was my dog. And then they told me that he had come over from Egypt, from Cairo, the streets of Cairo.
Whoa.
And I didn't believe them. I was like, come on, you're bullshitting me. Like, no. And he was, that he had been microchipped over there by a rescue. He was my little Egyptian dog. And yeah, I mean, at the beginning, I was so always hungover, always drinking. I would walk him drunk. We didn't have good walks. Like they were like around the block. And then when I get sober, George and I are doing 6 miles in Central Park every morning during off leash hours, where he's running around Central Park off leash. Like, so George's life got a lot better when I got sober. That's for sure.
That's awesome. I love it. Like, because I'm an animal lover. I mean, and I sometimes prefer my dogs to people. Um, um,
Yeah.
a lot of times. But I get it. I get it because like that's a driving force. So good for George. Good for George. I want to ask you
Yeah.
what's one of the worst times you can remember in your active addiction? Something that like if you had to like share with me right now that sucked. What happened?
I'd say the whole year of 2012 was
That's a
really
long
bad.
time.
Yeah. That was the second time I left college, and it was really bad. I ended up living with this random person in Hartford, Connecticut. Both my parents cut me off financially, and I had this like weird job. I was basically had $20, and I would decide if I should put gas in my car, if I could get like the cheapest bottle of alcohol, or if I could get cigarettes. And I had never had to struggle for money like that in my life. I pawned all my jewelry. Um, it was really dark time. I guess my dad one time gave me like gift cards to the grocery store because they knew I was going to spend money on drugs. Um, I was dealing drugs for a while, and not intentionally, but I didn't start intentionally. It was started, I went to Dartmouth, and it's really in the middle of nowhere. No one could get drugs up there. So I knew how to get drugs from the drug lords of Hartford, Connecticut. They were my friends. And so I would like literally go to Hartford and pick up a lot of drugs and then bring them up to New Hampshire. And yeah, I mean, there was a time during that year where I was on my way up to New Hampshire, and I passed out on the Amtrak train from Xanax and wine, and I had like a lot of drugs on me. And it was just like, I don't know how I didn't get into more trouble. Probably because I'm like a white girl that didn't really look, I don't know. I have no idea. I think my guardian angels were like looking over me, but there were so many instances where I just think back and I'm like, I could have gone to jail for a really long time, and I could have killed myself. I could have killed, like, I don't know, but it's, yeah.
No, I get it. I get it. And everything that you said, I think that's sort of a lot of people in recovery and a lot of people still going through their active addiction on a daily basis. I mean, everybody sort of did what they needed to do to survive. And I think a lot of us did things just so we could fuel our addiction, not thinking about the potential consequences at the time. However, now that we're, sober with supposedly a clearer head, looking back at it, we can understand that right from wrong. And I think that's one of the best things about it. Like, we do grasp, this concept of, number one, common sense when you get into sobriety, some people. And of course, of what right and wrong is, because you learn that. And you don't have to work steps for that. You don't have to go to meetings for that. And listen, anybody who goes to meetings, that's great. Whatever it takes for somebody to stay sober, whatever it takes for somebody really to stay alive in their recovery, because I'm a firm believer that recover your own way, whatever it's going to take. If abstinence is your course of recovery, so be it. If you are a person that's going through recovery and you can do everything, but you need to take, say, a Sublocade or a Suboxone, and you're staying alive, so be it. I can't judge somebody on that. I can't say if you're sober or not. That's not up to me to judge. However, in our recovery, we fight these demons still. It's not like we're saved. There is no way that we're saved. It's only the beginning. We fight this every day. I think recovery and sobriety is a hell of a lot harder than addiction. That's what I think. I'm not as sure if you agree with that or not, but I think it's a hell of a lot harder.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's harder for me necessarily. Yeah, I think my addiction, I think it depends on when I'm looking back to for addiction, but I think I just got to a point where I was going to give up on
Mm-hmm.
life, and I had given up for a while. And so I think sobriety just showed me that life it can feel good. It can be beautiful. It can be something that I was searching for by drinking, right? And I don't know, maybe it's the anxiety that went away from me.
Mm,
Um, but it was actually, to be honest, like a lot easier for me than I thought it was going to be
nice.
getting sober.
Awesome. I
But
love to hear
I
that.
know.
For me, I get that anxiety still. I still get that little bit of panic attacks going on, and then I just learn how to like harness it and come back to where I need to be. But you also, Rachel, put your name behind certain things. Like when I met you at DopeyCon, you were working with a non-alcoholic. You were serving non-alcoholic drinks.
Yeah, yeah. So I was serving Curious Elixirs and Joyous, just two companies that I've gotten to know over the past few years. And Curious Elixirs they're based here in New York, and their team is like my work family. I would call them my work family. Yeah, so I feel really grateful to have met so many people in the non-alcoholic beverage world. As you can see from behind me, these are all like non-alcoholic beverages. Um, but yeah, it's like what a time to be sober. Like there's so many cool drinks to have now. It's not
Mm-hmm.
just like O'Doul's that, someone's dad has in the closet.
That all makes me want to drink. Um, oh my God, O'Doul's. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of like zero proof restaurants and bars out there today. Philly, we have a great one. It's run by recovery, um, called Unity Recovery, and they have this great restaurant. So if you ever get to Philly, drinks on me. Let me know. I would love to take you
Yeah,
there. It's a
that'd
great
be
place.
super
Plus,
fun.
and it's vegan food. I don't, you know, I'm
Ooh.
I'm not vegan, but it's good food. You know.
I'm not vegan either, but my best friend from college, is actually coming to visit me on Friday, she got sober like 3 months after me. And
Hmm.
we partied a lot in college. We were like, it was the two of us against the world. And I stopped drinking. And then a few months later, she calls me up and she's like, "So I haven't had a drink in 30 days." And I was like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, you inspired me." She's like, I didn't even think to myself the possibility of not drinking. It just never occurred to me that I could stop. She's like, and then I saw you do it and how happy you were. She's like, so I had to do it. And now she's sober too.
That's amazing. What's her name?
Liz.
Congratulations, Liz. Give her a little shout out. If she's mad,
Yeah.
oh well. But that's awesome, though. You inspire people. How many people reach out to you and say, "Hey, Rachel, you've inspired me to go sober. You've inspired me to reevaluate things." If one person does, you made a difference.
Thousands. I get thousands of messages like that. And I'm not even like, it's literally over 1,000 people. I when I started getting those messages, they started pretty early on in my account. But I was working at my nonprofit job. I worked in nonprofit philanthropy. I always knew I wanted to help people and make a difference in society. I just didn't know what it was.
Mhm.
And I think not knowing my purpose also contributed to me feeling lost and not, you know, drinking. But taking money from wealthy New Yorkers and giving it to people who needed it helped me sleep at night. But I didn't feel that direct impact.
Mm.
So when I started getting the DMs that were like, "I found your page a year ago and now I'm 6 months sober. Like I couldn't have done it without your daily post." Like I started getting those a lot, and I couldn't believe that just like me being me and me sharing my story on Instagram was helping people get sober. And that feeling and those messages, I mean, there's nothing like it.
Mhm.
And then the ripple effects of sobriety are crazy because you know that that person gets sober and everyone in their orbit reevaluates their relationship with alcohol too. So it's like there's even another creator on Instagram now who has like 16,000 followers, and she messages me all the time and says, you know, she followed me for months before she got sober, and then I was the first sober Instagram account she found, and my account helped her get sober, and now she has this massive following and she has helping other people get sober too. And it's yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
It's awesome. It's awesome to see the effect that your story has on other people. You know, like they always say, never be afraid to share your story. You never know who it's going to inspire, and your story inspires. I mean, especially and please don't take this wrong because some people will. You know, there's not a lot of women in the past that have spoken out on recovery. It was never really known to be women in recovery. It was always men. You know, people thought about AA and they always thought men. You know, they don't really think about it. So to be a voice for women, that's even better. I mean, it's needed, you know, and you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. No,
You
I
know,
totally know what you're saying. And also, I mean, the data and what they're saying with drinking on the rise, especially in women. I mean, women are drinking as much as men now. I don't think women were used to drink as much as men. I mean, that's what the data says, at
hmm
least. And I can tell you from my followers, 78% of my followers are women, which is, yeah. And I think women, though, are also waking up to, we don't need to poison our bodies. We don't need to have mommy wine culture. We can be
yeah,
healthy and life is still fun
yeah, I love it.
without the alcohol.
I love it. So talk to me about October 28th, which is my recovery date. But what are you doing? What's happening?
So I was asked by this nonprofit called Shatterproof to help lead a walk that they have here in New York City that is about ending the stigma around addiction and recovery. They actually had walks all over the country. So in Chicago, in Texas, in California, Boston. And yeah, they reached out a few months ago, and I've been working on this for the last month. And there are some other people in the New York City recovery world that are going to be at the walk too. So it's going to be great. It's going to be on the West Side Highway, and we're going to, just get together and walk together and be with the community and meet new people and see people we know. And yeah, I mean, it's walking's also my thing. Like, I mean, I know a lot of us in recovery either love to walk or run. Um, but that's kind of why I started Sober in Central Park too, is I was up moving my body every morning, feeling good. So I was really honored that they asked me to be part of this campaign. I think it's gonna be awesome.
As you should. Shatterproof does great things to fight the stigma, to break the stigma. Plus, you're walking to raise awareness and raise money for a great organization. And that's amazing to put your name behind it and to be asked to do it. So you're doing
Yeah.
great things. You're doing some really great things. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
love it.
I'm actually tomorrow I'm walking in a fashion show for another nonprofit called the Break Free. It's the Break Free Gala and Runway Show. And this amazing woman named Alexandra started the nonprofit, and it's also to end the stigma, and it's to honor people who are recovering out loud. And she asked if I would be one of the models in the runway. So I'll be doing that along with other people from Instagram. So there's a woman who I'm really good friends with called, her name's Kim. She has an account called Sober is the New Cool. And she's going to be walking in the fashion show too. And it's like George Park. And yeah, it's like a black tie gala. And I can't believe that, like, I'm walking in a fashion show, I'm leading a walk, all to like help addiction and recovery. Like, yeah.
And 3 years ago, you were sitting at a bar.
I mean, yeah, or drinking alone, honestly.
Right?
Like,
Or 3 years ago, your life was so different. You have turned it around so greatly. They say, once you give in, great things happen, and they are happening. You are living proof of that, Rachel, and you should be proud of that. And people really need to be following you. So if they want to follow you on Instagram, you are
at Sober in Central Park.
Facebook.
I don't really use it, but we
No,
can go to it's Sober in Central Park. I know I need to get better about
just
like having a
link
Facebook.
your Instagram to your Facebook, and it all
It
posts.
is, but I'm never on there, and I need to like respond to comments and like talk to the people, and like it's just Instagram's a lot. It does take up a lot of my battery. No, but
Yeah.
I will say 3 years ago, you're right. I actually saw a clip of myself sitting outside a bar down the street. My face is so swollen and big. It's just like this round. I don't recognize myself at all. I was unemployed. I was still with my ex, and my body just hurt all the time. No, like that version of me 3 years ago would never in a million years believe my life now. Never.
Do you
Like,
think
I work for myself now. Like,
do
it's
you think you
crazy.
could be friends with yourself who you were 3 years ago?
No, I would have
No.
nothing in common with her. I would literally look at her and just feel really sorry for her and be like, she needs serious help. Like, no.
Well, I got to tell you, I love what you've done. I love who you are and who you become and who you're becoming. I love your heart. Once again, your vibes just kick ass. You're amazing.
Thanks.
And I look forward to a lot more connections with you over time because I believe that, when we talk about the recovery community, it goes a lot further than just the little sphere that we're in. It reaches out, It is worldwide, first of all, it's an international thing. But yet we need each other's support because there's so many people out there who are either in recovery and afraid to talk about it or want to get into it and really don't know how to do it. And it's people like yourself and the crowd you are surrounding yourself with that will make a difference. So thank you for that. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I love your vibe too. Your vibe is infectious. So I can't wait for more interaction. And I'll see you on Saturday, right? At the lock.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I look
Can't
forward
wait.
to it. I'm excited. Rachel, it's great. Next time you're on my show, bring George on with you. You
I
know,
will.
let him
He's
there so
sitting
he's
on the
not.
couch looking at me
I
like,
know.
Mom,
Like,
hello.
mom, time to go for a walk. But, I just got to tell you once again, I love your energy. You're awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Got it. Well,
You're
everybody,
awesome.
make sure you're following Rachel out there on social media. Sober in Central Park on Instagram. She posts daily. Her stories are great. She has a great message. She's doing great things. If you're in the New York City area this coming Saturday, the 28th of October, join her on the Shatterproof Walk. Other than that, Rachel, thank you once again. Everybody else out there, this is Britt James Carpenter on Usula Media. Remember, whatever it is you stand for, be a voice. Have a great rest of your day.